Good day. This is David with EV World News, where we talk about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. I'm here today with our founder, Bill Moore. How's it going, Bill?
Doing great, thank you.
All right, so we got a bunch of articles to cover today. Lots of stuff.
Oh
Actually,
my, lots
some
of ground
days,
to cover.
yeah. So some days it's kind of quiet, but today I'm going to start out with an article about BMW has decided to stop making ICE vehicles in Germany.
Yeah,
And this article comes to us from Electric, but they've decided to swap their Bavarian plants are going to be EV only now. They're going to do some ICE production in the UK and Austria, but it has announced it will discontinue ICE production in Germany. And that's a pretty big step
it is
for them to take.
that's a big step. Yeah, because that's what they're known for. Their performance vehicles. Supported and held up by their engines.
Right.
And to tell the world we're not going to build those anymore in Bavaria. They will still build them in Austria and the UK. But I can even see that starting to begin to taper off. But to get out of it in Germany, that's significant.
It certainly is. And another a big announcement. This one, Toyota has been kind of weird about their announcements about what they're doing with electric cars, what they're not doing with electric
To
cars,
say the least.
what they're doing with hydrogen. What's the end
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
electric cars? What's the end of gas cars? It gets kind of they. I think they just try to keep people confused and try to stay relevant. They are four of the world's top five selling cars.
Right.
So it's important what Toyota is doing. But what's interesting is they've announced that the Camry, which is the best-selling car in the U.S. I
Yeah.
don't think it's just the best-selling Toyota in the U.S. It's the best-selling car overall in the United States, is going to go to gas electric hybrid powertrain. And what I thought was kind of interesting about this, so they're gonna drop the gas only, 2.5-liter gas with an electric drive system tuned to deliver more power, front-wheel drive, and all-wheel drive versions of the car. Now, I've never driven an all-wheel drive Camry, um, but I mean, they've always been front-wheel drive,
Yeah.
and I thought they'd had hybrid versions of that. I know they had a hybrid version of the Avalon, but they've discontinued the Avalon. And
Every now and then I see some. You'll see, very infrequently. I think you'll see a hybrid Camry. But again, my aged memory, can be faulty. Oh, let me just interject here, talking about faulty memory. Last time we were talking about the COPE conference taking place in Abu Dhabi. Um, it's actually COPE 28, Bill, not COPE 19.
I think
My bad.
is it 28 or
COPE
29? Yeah,
no,
and it's in Dubai.
28.
It's not. Well, yeah, it is. I guess Abu Dhabi is in the United Arab Emirates.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. Now that's a country that's confusing because it's kind of like
It's a
United States.
confederation,
Yeah,
sort of.
it's a loose group because I think there may be, I don't want to get into their politics.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It is a little different than maybe what we're accustomed to here
Right.
in the
Right.
US. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
This is kind of
A bunch of United Shakedoms, So
right. So this hybrid powertrain has an all-wheel drive system with 232 combined horsepower, which is 15% more than the outgoing Camry. That's
are they?
pretty
What I'm
decent.
wondering, are they driving those rear wheels with a with electric motor, or are they just? I don't, because that engine generally sits sideways. I have a Camry, or I have a Prius, and
Mhm.
the engine sits sideways, and the generator comes off of that, and then they drive the wheel. They drive the wheels from that. So I'm wondering, is that are they? I haven't really stayed up to date on what Toyota's been doing, because most of the stuff they're doing is only partially electric. Um, so
Yeah,
is that an electric motor in the back? That would be my
it's
guess.
not getting real specific here. It
Yeah.
just says that a current Camry hybrid is rated at 52 miles per gallon in combined city and highway driving, compared to just 32 for the four-cylinder gas Camry. And hybrid saves about $650 a year in fuel costs compared with the combustion model. Um, it doesn't really give much data
Yeah.
in that way.
Steve, and while we're the Prius, the new Prius has been elected or voted the car of the year by Road and Track or somebody like that.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah,
The new
it's
design.
really they really did. That's an attractive car. They've done it. So the past couple versions are a little too wonky, and I don't know. I just couldn't warm up to them. But this new one, I like it. It's a pretty attractive car.
Nice. Yeah, I think it may be a challenge sometimes. If you make the cheap car too attractive, then people don't want to buy your more expensive models. So I think that's why I think, like I've said this about the Chevy Bolt. I mean, I think they intentionally make it look like a dud so that other cars will sell. And I mean,
Well, a lot of that is in the eye of the beholder. I
I
mean,
agree. I
yeah.
agree.
It's
You wouldn't.
what some cars I just get turned off on, and others I think are really neat, and then I'll read a review where that particular rider pans the car. So
Yeah, if I were designing the cars and I were doing the drawings, they probably all just kind of look like a wedge. You just have a wedge going down the road, for aerodynamics and all of that.
all mine would look like Jaguars,
There you go.
1950s era Jaguars.
Nice. All right. So, yesterday I was talking about Renault has a cheaper EV coming out in Europe, and now Volkswagen's basically announcing kind of the same thing, a
Mm-hmm.
$22,000 electric car possible around 2025. And let's see, they're putting these in US dollars, so we'll see. But this was at a Berlin conference. He had notes advances in unified battery cells that VW claims will cut battery costs in half. Well, that would be pretty huge. Volkswagen unveiled the new battery cells during its Power Day in 2021. The company said the flexibility would enable use in up to 80% of all Volkswagen Group EV models. The unified cells will be made in a factory in Salzgitter beginning in 2025. So they said they could reach 40 gigawatt hours annual capacity, or enough for 500,000 vehicles. Wow, that's a lot of cars. Let's see.
Yeah, they says what spacious like a Golf and something about the Polo and affordable like the Polo. So is that what is it? Is that an ID, or would they label that an ID two, or what would that
Maybe
be?
that's kind of what they're looking at here, is maybe an ID2.
Yeah,
Man, they could get some better names. I mean, the whole company, it's named the People Car, right?
yeah.
The let's see. The ID2, all will be unveiled for Europe in 2025, be based on the MEB entry platform as one of the 10 models launching by 26. Yeah, I think that would be all right. Oh, the project was tipped to be called the ID1. It would be the smallest, most affordable VW electric
Okay,
ever.
okay.
The Polo is 156 inches long, 66 inches wide, and 58 inches tall. So the new electric model will likely be in that range. Let's see, how tall is this guy in the picture? Yeah, so I wouldn't get somebody like me to stand next to it. So that would be the
Yeah,
trick,
yeah, a
pushing
shorter
these.
person. Yeah.
Anyways, I thought that was interesting. So let's get on to our more key articles
Well,
for
hey, well, let's
today.
talk about if we're talking about Volkswagen, we have to
Mhm.
talk about the Vatican.
Okay, all right. So let's see where what we got going on with the Vatican today. So the Vatican has made a switch to electric vehicles. Now, what'd you say? You think they've got about 40 cars?
Well, yeah, the Vatican, a 119-acre, that's the size of it, city state. They're within the precincts of the city of Rome. Have their own fleet. It's about 40 vehicles. I don't think that include. I don't know if that includes the Pope Mobile or not. But they have a fleet of cars, which obviously are used for their staff to get around in. So Volkswagen has announced that they will be providing. The Vatican has, in keeping with the Pope's, I think it was 2015 encyclical or something like that, to basically put the Vatican's money where its mouth is,
Mhm.
to get off of fossil fuels. And so Volkswagen is going to be supplying them between now and I think 2030, I believe, with ID 3, 4, and 5 model cars, not all at once, but gradually over time, so that by the time we get to 2030, the entire 40 car fleet has been replaced with electrics. Now, the interesting thing is what I'd like to know is the Pope Benedict the 16th, I think, it put solar panels on the roof of many of the buildings in the Vatican.
Oh, okay.
So what I'm wondering is there enough power available that isn't feeding, lights and computer equipment and things like that? If there's enough power coming out of that system, if they couldn't be charging some of that 40 vehicle fleet with solar energy, that would really be cool.
Well, they could use them all to store the energy from that
And
solar.
they could use it for yeah, for energy storage. I don't know if Volkswagen has done a lot with vehicle to grid. I can't remember reading any about it, but it wouldn't surprise me if that's a everybody. Generally, the car makers are going in that direction. So,
Well, but you can do that now that the chargers
oh,
themselves are going
oh,
in that direction. So,
I'm thinking vehicle to grid back and forth. So
yeah,
you can
the,
charge the cars up. They're sitting in a fleet garage somewhere, or sitting, out in the open collecting sunlight during the day. You plug them in, then you can provide, electrical lights and things like that for the Vatican at night. So,
remind me after the show to tell you about a purchase order I've received previously from the Vatican. I won't discuss
okay.
it on the show, but it's very entertaining. Yeah, anyways, yeah, so they're getting ID threes, fours, and fives
Yeah,
from Volkswagen. So that's kind of a cool deal that they're doing that. Let's move on to this article about Mercedes and charging stations here in the US. So this is kind of interesting. A new 400 kilowatt fast charging. It's more than current EVs can handle. And they're
yeah,
looking at putting in, is it also 400 plus stations?
yeah.
I wanted to mention too, I'm trying to get somebody for an interview that's putting in EV only stations, meaning, not gas stations. They're
Not
going to
gas
be
stations, but EV only.
electric
Yeah,
stations, but they're going to have actual stores with them.
right.
So
Yeah,
they're actually going in as electric vehicle type gas
and probably
stations.
some kind of a deli or something along that line. So,
Yeah, oh, I'm sure they'll have a lot. I think that'll be kind of an interesting interview because people don't realize that there's money going
well,
into
over
that
in the
space to
UK, there's
develop.
a company that is actually they've built them along the. I don't know how many they've built, but they were working on building out some charging stations along the motorways over in the UK, and not associated with gasoline. They're all electric, but they include a place, a lounge for you, and they even include a workout area. So if
Mhm.
you want to go in there and you want to take, 30 minutes to charge your car, you can get 30 minutes on the treadmill, or,
Oh, yeah.
whatever you'd like to do.
Yeah, that's kind of a good idea.
Yeah.
This is, and I think a lot of it, when you start talking about people who live in apartments, they need to have somewhere creative to go charge their car. I mean, that's why you see a lot of the charging stations are, well, and like the Tesla ones are almost all at Hy-Vee grocery stores.
Yeah.
And so, that's helpful. But this is kind of interesting. So it's a new type of EV charging station that Mercedes is putting in. Truly rapid fast charging and cushy amenities debuts in Atlanta today, and they're currently charging up to 400 kilowatts. Currently, only one car, and Porsche was the first EV
Yeah.
brand that could handle 350. So I don't know if any cars can handle the the 500 yet.
I'm guessing probably if it's Mercedes, they're thinking ahead. Future car of their cars will have that capability.
Yeah. So, and one of the things is too, you have to have enough juice on the local grid to
Yeah,
supply those as
yeah,
well for it to really charge that fast. So
yeah.
if you
I'm
have a
guessing
whole
there's a big transformer there somewhere.
Yeah, because if you have a lot of cars charging at the same place, each one kind of just a tiny bit slows down the others charging at the same time. And it's not huge, but it is a
Yeah,
slight difference. So it's interesting to kind of see what's going on here. But Mercedes quality charging just has a nice ring to the sound, or has
yeah,
a nice ring to it, and it sounds good. So that's quite a nice update.
yeah. 400 of them too. I mean, that's
Yeah, pretty considerable.
it'd be interesting. Of course, obviously they're going to be in the heavier EV corridor, so I'm guessing most of them will be somewhere, along the East Coast, and you'll have some obviously scattered across probably Interstate, 10 and Interstate 40 with luck, maybe here, Interstate 80, but and then of
You know,
course in California. So
one of the big things you see is when it comes to how they're going to get enough power to like truck stops so that they get enough power when there starts being a lot of electric trucks to be able to, because you've got to transmit all that power to those
mhm,
truck stops, and a lot of those truck stops are sitting at a freeway intersection that's out in the middle of nowhere. Of
yeah,
course, you could have a solar grid right there too, right?
yeah,
So you could have renewables, but then you've got to have the storage for those renewables to be able to
or
provide it.
like over in western Iowa here on Interstate
Mhm.
80, you got hundreds of
Wind.
thousands of acres of wind turbines right on the interstate, right? So, in
Mhm.
fact, one of the rest stops actually is known because it has a giant wind turbine blade as the landmark, sticking
Oh
up out of
wow.
the ground in the thing. So, at least in eastern, or I'm sorry, in western Iowa, that could easily be, coming from those wind turbines because there's lots of them.
Yeah,
If you've not driven on Interstate 80 in western Iowa, that's an eye opener. It really is amazing.
there's some truck stop that on I-80 that's in Iowa that's also known for its really high level cuisine. I don't know where it is, but like they have a high level chef or
Oh,
something in there.
Michelin quality, huh?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But let's go ahead and let's talk about the Roosevelt report. So this
Now
one's on you, Bill.
that is interesting. It's a New York Times article, so unfortunately Dave doesn't have access. I do because I'm one of the a subscriber. Well, courtesy of my daughter. Thank you, Carissa. But anyway, so back in 20, I think again 2015, 2016, somewhere in there, the Roosevelt Institute in New York City, obviously named, I am assuming after Franklin Delano Roosevelt rather than Theodore, um, that they wrote a report on, why has our current economic strategy really not worked all that well over the last 40, 50 years. Which generally benefited the rich, and the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. So they came up with a report that, as near as I read, it basically serves as the basis for the Biden administration's economic policies. And the philosophy of the report is essentially you want to spend things that benefit people down the economic ladder. And when you do that, economic benefits surge up. right? Like
Right.
a tide rather than the old trickle down business, right?
Mhm.
Of Reagan and that whole ilk. Pardon me if you're a Reagan supporter. I'm not. Um, so that's the philosophy. Now the question is, will it work, right? And at what cost? And what is that doing to inflation? And that's a whole other argument we could, I guess, get into. But anyway, it seems to be working because many of the economic indicators seem to be saying that we're going in the right direction in terms of job inflation coming down. The price of gasoline is now down. Not that I care because I use electricity, but right. So it'll be interesting to see how it works. Is it a winning philosophy? Does we? I guess we'll have to see. Right now, it appears to be going in the right direction. So, but I thought it was interesting. And again, it's if you got access to the New York Times, you can read the article there. And of
You know,
course, we have it. I have it linked off of. Do I yet? I don't think I have it linked off of. I will later today. I'll have it linked off of EV World. So
well, economics is always an interesting thing to see where different things are going on. I mean, obviously, we've had some geopolitical events in the last couple of years that have really affected some things. I mean, obviously, the war in Ukraine really affected fuel prices, and there's you know the whatever is going on in the Middle East right now keeps looking like it could expand. I don't think it
uh,
actually will. I don't think it actually
yeah,
will expand. That's
I
probably
don't.
why gas prices aren't going up because it would look like, oh God, here we
Yeah.
go, another dollar gas price raise. And that's one of the things that people it's the one barometer that people see because you drive down the road and the price changes and people pay
Right.
attention to what that is because it's one of the few things that's sort of a constant and most people still are buying.
Yeah.
And so it's a constant. It is also interesting when you travel from state to state, you see how some states are cheaper or more expensive. It's very eye-opening to travel to California and look at fuel prices. You know,
Or Washington State, which is where I'm
yeah,
headed next week.
yes,
So
it's
yeah,
a
boy, they really sock it to them out there.
oh yeah. Well, the funny thing is too, they have all these taxes that are designed to improve the roads and all that. When you're on the West Coast, and I guess, when you've got so many more people driving too, but the roads are always just in terrible shape. That's one thing I appreciate about living in the part of the country we live in. It's, well, you and I both live in Sarpy County. It's
Right.
much better in our county than it is in the county north of us.
So
And then the one above that is even
yeah,
worse.
well that gets pretty rural out that direction. So
Yeah, but I'm just
yeah,
saying.
because half Sarpy County is the northern half is just basically an extension of Omaha. So
It is, but the roads are
you
so
have
much
to go.
better.
Pardon?
But the roads are so much better.
Yeah.
And they're crazy about it here. There can be a little ding in the road and they come tear the road out and a whole crew of people comes out and pours new concrete. And
Right.
I'm just
Right.
like,
Yeah.
wow. I mean,
Yeah. Over here
maybe,
on 96th Street.
yeah, it's really nuts. If you lived somewhere else and you came and you saw how efficient they are in the county Bill and I live in, you'd be really upset, you
Now,
know.
this is coming. I have spent most of my life living here. So,
Mhm.
but you're talking, from Dave's perspective, Dave has lived where?
Oh,
Well, you came from Memphis and you've been in Florida and
Oh, I've lived in Florida, I've lived in Tennessee, I've lived in Northern Virginia in the Washington, D.C. metro, I've lived in Houston. So I've lived a few places, and I've also lived in the Dakotas and in Iowa.
yeah,
And so I've lived a few places. Um, well, I lived in Berlin, Germany too, but I didn't drive. I was
yeah,
just a
yeah.
baby. But I'm just saying that, I've seen different roads. And, once again, if you're tuning in from anywhere else on the planet, this is a first world problem.
Yeah, thank God we don't have to worry about running out of gasoline for the generators of our hospital. It's just
Oh, right, right. You
it's
know,
so
we
sad.
have we have clean water and all these other
Yeah,
things we
yeah,
can be
yeah,
grateful to have here in the United
yeah,
States, but it
yeah.
is interesting to see. So, next, getting on to this, we're going to talk about something worldwide. We're going to talk about all the metals we mined in
Oh, this
2022.
is the literal iron elephant in the room.
Yeah,
I was I was jaw dropped when I saw this because
so
we
this
have
is
all this
interesting.
hand wringing about where we're going to get the lithium from and what are all the environmental impact of mining lithium and rare earths and all that. Holy crap! And nobody says a thing about iron ore. You
So
have to, folks. You've got to look at this graphic. It is
this
jaw dropping.
Yeah. So in 2022, we mined 2.8 billion tons of metal from the world. Okay.
Just in
2.6,
2022.
just in 2.6 billion tons. I don't know where does this go? 2.6 billion tons here. So out of that 2.8, 2.6 billion of it was iron ore. And
Iron
it's
ore.
here we go. Here's
90, I
the
think it's what, 93%? Something like
Yeah,
that.
about that. I mean, it's tremendous. And then the other point 0.2 billion, which isn't even that, it's 100 and no, I'm sorry, it's 185 million, which is a little less than point 0.2 billion, is everything else.
Yeah.
And aluminum is by far the biggest, then chromium. Now, I'm not sure where chromium comes from. Don't we use that in EVs? I'm thinking we
Oh,
use a little bit of that,
well, probably, yeah, there's some of, I imagine,
but it's not
I think
rare.
it's used, chromium is used for steel, I believe, isn't it? For
Yeah,
smelting steel,
probably. And then we have
trenching
copper,
steel. And copper, of
20
course, copper is the big one. Copper
used in
you
so
know, what
much.
makes the world go around, electrically speaking. So,
Yep, and then manganese, then zinc, titanium.
yeah, and
Uh,
then look at the technological metals.
yeah, we're starting to get down there.
Wow.
Lead, nickel, zircon, magnesium. So now we stop being in the millions. Now we're into the hundreds of thousands,
Thousands of
uraniums. So here's
tons.
just something interesting. 49,000 tons of uranium were extracted. Now we start getting 2.2 thousand tons of mercury, some of these. Now we get into the technology and precious metals. We've gone from billions to 185 millions to 1.5 million in the entire technology and precious metals sector, of which 10 is by far the biggest. Rare earth oxides. I don't know what that is. Molybdenum.
That's a whole bunch of things that basically are used to make permanent magnets.
So here's where we start getting into battery technology. 190,000 tons of cobalt, 130,000 tons of lithium. Um, wow, silver is only 26,000 tons.
Yeah,
Cadmium, gold, 3.1 thousand tons. But it's really interesting. Wow, platinum, 400 tons.
yeah.
And I've never even heard of rhenium. Um,
That's why platinum rings are more expensive than gold rings.
yes, yes. But it's really interesting to take that into consideration, how little of these other things are mined compared to
Compared
iron
to
ore.
iron ore, I'm only, like I said, it's the elephant in the room. It's the jaw dropper. I had no idea.
I can't imagine what all this iron is being used for. I mean, I realize it's
Well, just
used in
about
so many
everything we
things.
make.
Yeah, I get that, but I guess, you know, you think about that. Um, that's like a almost a ton of iron ore for every what, 4 people?
Yeah.
So that's like 500 pounds of iron ore for every human in 1 year. It's just really staggering to think that
Uh,
humans are consuming that much iron ore. And I don't know how much ore it takes to convert into
yeah.
actual metal and to, you know, used for that.
I don't
98%
either.
is dedicated to steel making, but it's really interesting to try to just wrap your head around that. I mean, that's like 500 pounds of iron ore or more per human
Yeah.
is mined each year, and that's just a staggering um, amount. And I
Yeah,
still had,
that's why I had to share that one. That's just particularly because you see all these things, like I said early on, the hand wringing about how much lithium we're doing and how much cobalt we're doing, and and what does that mean to the environment? Good Lord, why aren't we talking about iron ore?
yeah,
You
where are
know,
we digging up all this iron ore? I mean,
well,
it's
I
a good
assume
question.
Australia, Africa, probably Russia. And they're
Yeah.
probably, there are areas you had, up in Minnesota and those areas you
Hmm.
had, had iron ore
Right.
fields. I don't know how much is coming out of those now that was, exploited the last century. So I'm guessing, much of it coming out of Africa and Russia and Australia and probably
Well,
China.
here's one that I thought was really the big news for today. GM snatches up key Tesla
Yeah.
gigacasting supplier. So,
Wow.
gigacasting is the ability to take large parts of the car manufacturing process that we're taking, say, 40 separate parts and casting them as one single part. And part of the problem with this was having a gigapress capable of putting that much pressure into the metal and formulating this. And so Tesla has pioneered this, and it can save time and money. And GM
Goes out.
TEI
Well,
is now part of General Motors after agreeing to a deal that may have flown under the radar, part of the U.S. automaker's strategy to make up ground on Tesla from people familiar with the transaction. By
wow.
snapping up a specialist in sand casting techniques that accelerated the development of Tesla's gigacasting molds and allowed it to cast more complex components, GM has jump-started its own push to make cars more cheaply and efficiently at a time when Tesla is racing to roll out a $25,000 EV.
Yeah, you wonder how. Of course, they've already got the equipment. The equipment's in place. But if they are going to want to expand and put that technology in, like for example, the factory in Mexico City or in Mexico, who's going to supply it? Does GM's agreement with this company, are they exclusive? That I think that we have to see. But boy, talk about a strategic, kind of like playing checkers and taking or chess and, taking your bishop. Wow.
Yep. And that's just tremendous. It's a tremendous thing. And maybe this will help, keep GM relevant. You and I've talked about this. One of my big fears has been, can the US big three stay relevant in this world of EVs? And GM's certainly made a bold move that I think will ensure that. Anyways, we've had a long show today, Bill.
I
So,
know, lots of cool stuff to talk about.
yeah,
The
and
iron elephant in the room, the gigapress, or that technology, casting
right.
technology. So yeah, Vatican. Boy, talk
Yeah,
about covering the spectrum
we sure have.
from
Anyways,
heaven to hell.
yeah, there you go. Hey, so everyone, thanks for tuning in today.
Thanks, everybody.
And